I'm Bart Tangier. My family surname goes back to the Channel Islands, part of Great Britain. As this clearly shows, I do not belong to a culture where arranged marriages are the norm. In fact, the culture I come from doesn't approve of them at all. However, my parents are the exception to the rule, although in the United States as a whole, arranged marriages are about as common as snake legs. I guess the fact that my parents are very overbearing and that I was a firstborn and had the classic firstborn desire to please and conform made me completely susceptible to meeting their expectations. My younger brother and sister were rebels, but their attitude, on the contrary, made me want to please my parents more. Long story short, my parents decided it would be great if I married Jessica Garth, the eldest daughter of my father's business partner, Vermeer Gartha. The surname Garth has its origins in Surrey, also in the UK, where, again, arranged marriages were virtually unheard of. My father and Vermeer. There was a very successful business called Nemesis LLC, and everyone expected that someday I would do it. Vermeer had 3 daughters and no sons, and not one of his daughters was in the least interested in business, and Vermeer constantly called me a really good boy throughout my life, so his expectations of me were the same as my father's. I passed all college courses and excelled in them, which gave me the prerequisites to head Nemesis LLC. My complete lack of strength of character allowed my parents and the Garths to force me to marry Jessica. Jessica was not ugly, obese, obnoxious, stupid, pretentious, evil, or cruel. Rather, she was simply nothing. I have never been sexually attracted to Jessica, and I believed, and this was confirmed, that Jessica may have had the lowest libido of anyone who wasn't a nun or eunuch in the entire United States. What she did have in abundance was an even greater desire to please her parents than I did. Shortly before my wedding, I chickened out, and my brother and sister encouraged me to stand up for myself and tell all my parents to get out. When I met Jessica about a month before our wedding, she felt my anxiety. We were drinking coffee after watching a movie, and she took my hand. "You're starting to get nervous, aren't you, Bart? Is it really that obvious?" I grinned. "This is obvious to me, since I have the same concerns as you. I know you don't love me and I don't love you, but we are compatible. We've known each other all our lives and have never exchanged harsh words, have we?" she said with a smile. "I think not. But don't you long for a knight in shining armor to come and sweep you off your feet?" Jessica laughed. "Hardly. Too much drama. I want a comfortable life with close families and compatibility. Passion is overrated. I want to please my parents and yours. And I know you feel the same. We have a good life ahead of us, better than 99% of the people in the world, even without romance." "Do you really believe this?" I asked, not skeptically, but simply informationally. "Yes, definitely. Don't cancel the wedding, Bart. I will be a good wife and mother to our children. I know I'm not Jennifer Lopez or Elizabeth Hurley in looks or passion, but I will never give you the drama and heartache that you might expect from them," she smiled. I doubted that Jessica attracted me more than I attracted her. However, I followed her advice and did not cancel the wedding. We dutifully got married after graduating from college, 3 months after my 21st birthday, and 2 months before her 21st. To say that both sets of parents were pleased when we went on a week-long honeymoon to Bermuda, at their expense, would be the understatement of the decade. All 4 were crying. I almost cried too, for a different reason, thinking that I would never find true love. I imagine most newlyweds have passionate sex on their honeymoon. Although Jessica had sex 3 times during our honeymoon, it was more of a biological function than lust, and certainly not love. Perhaps there was a bit of passion, but no more. Even though we had known each other our entire lives, in light of our new relationship, we learned a lot more about each other. Nothing bad about it, mostly just boring. Although I didn't have much experience, it was clear that Jessica was a bad lover. Despite this, she had one advantage, that she was truly fertile. And I must be too. Jessica wasn't in the fertile part of her cycle during our honeymoon, so she delayed taking birth control until she returned from Bermuda. However, she became pregnant during our honeymoon. She went on to have a second and third child by the time we had been married for only 3.5 years, despite our infrequent sex. We decided that 3 was enough, and since she seemed to get pregnant about 1 out of every 5 times we fucked, we agreed that she would have her tubes tied after the third. So, although I was not yet 25, I had a wife and 3 children. Fortunately, Jessica. She was a good stay-at-home mother, except for the fact that, as far as affection was concerned, we were more like cousins than husband. From a difficult situation in Moldova, and sending $400 a month to her parents and brother. Her maiden name was Puskau. She was of Romanian descent and married young, but her first husband was killed under mysterious circumstances. She had no children. When Danica got ready to leave around 3:30, she said that she needed to catch the bus in half an hour. "May I take you home?" "Please, yes," she smiled. "But first, the ladies' room." "I'll take the car. It's a blue Tesla. Just wait at the entrance." When I picked her up, I entered her home address into my GPS, and off we went. After a pleasant conversation during the roughly 20-minute drive, when I pulled up to her mini-mansion home, I asked if she could meet tomorrow or Friday. "Yes, you will pick me up here on Friday morning at 10. "We need to talk," she said with a smile, then kissed me on the cheek and walked towards the house with a smooth gait. "Really nice ass," I muttered under my breath. Friday didn't go as I planned. Danica directed me to a remote parking spot at a local park. She then unbuckled her seatbelt, turned to me, and pulled a piece of paper out of her purse. "My English is poor. Besides, I'm nervous. So please read and don't be upset," she said, handing me a piece of paper. In much better English than its spoken form, it said, "I'm excited. I am very grateful to my husband, but he never satisfied me the way my first husband did. I feel a strong attraction to you. Maybe it's even love. I think you feel the same attraction to me. If so, can we have sex?" I blushed. She looked flushed, too. While I was looking at her, she quickly unbuttoned her blouse. Although I was stunned for a few seconds, I never had any doubts about what I was about to do. My arranged marriage was not an obstacle to sexual satisfaction, and this woman was the first woman in my entire life who could certainly lead me to sexual nirvana. "Do you mean yes?" She giggled. "Yes. 1,000 times. Yes. When can we meet?" "Unfortunately, I'm busy on weekends. Monday 2:30 at the grocery store. You'll pick me up. Find a hotel." She grinned. "It's a date," I smiled. I had no guilt when I picked up Danica at the back door of the deli on Monday. My arranged marriage did not deprive me of the only chance for true romantic love in my life. Although the idea that Jessica might be interested in seeking sex with another person seemed ridiculous to me, deep down I knew I wouldn't have a problem if she did it as long as it was love. I myself could not refuse the experience of love. Just in case, I checked in alone and simply left a piece of paper with the room number on the table in the lobby, where she could easily see me leaving it. 5 minutes later, she knocked lightly on the door. We were hungry like hungry panthers. We undressed each other and were in a passionate embrace for 90 seconds after she walked through the door. I wanted our first time to be something she would never forget. By the time we both came to our senses, it was already 4:30, and we both had to go. As we walked back to her house with big, shitty grins on our faces, she said, "On the days when I work, there is no time. Will you pick me up on Friday at 9 a.m.? "Necessarily. Give me your cell phone number in case I need to call." "I don't have a mobile phone," she answered, shrugging. "I'll give it to you on Wednesday," I smiled. I gave Danica a prepaid cell phone on Wednesday when I stopped at the grocery store for lunch. She was familiar with mobile phones and did not need any instructions. While we exchanged smiles on both Tuesday and Wednesday, we tried not to look at each other too much or interact. I had a boner both days during lunch. Friday was the best day of my life. I made love for the first time in my life. I couldn't believe that the emotional satisfaction of this act was even more complete than the physical part. Hard to imagine, considering how physically exhausting it was. For 2 months after my love at first sight with Danica, I considered myself the happiest person in the world. I realized that before Danica, I had a hidden resentment towards Jessica and my parents related to the arranged marriage. I had a perfectly happy family life, a successful, if not exciting, business life, and true love all at the same time. Danica and I came up with a lot of good ideas about not only how we could get together to make love, but also how we could improve our lives. I forced Danica to enroll in English and driver's education classes so she could get her driver's license. She talked me into having a love nest so we wouldn't have to use hotels. I was able to set up a room that was tucked away in the back of one of our satellite offices that was easy to get into, but only if you knew it was there, had the key, and knew the code. Danica turned out to be very smart. Within a year, she spoke excellent English, and after receiving her driver's license, she was able to persuade her husband to buy her a used car so she could easily get around wherever she pleased. I was able to hire several excellent employees so that my time with Danica did not in any way diminish my time with the children, and the business ran smoothly and profitably. We were even able to go on a couple of overnight excursions together. These excursions were the highlight of my personal life. Danica and I had been in love for 3 years, 2 months, and 18 days, when life threw us into a whirlpool. Jessica got into a car accident. Although her body was not seriously injured, she suffered a cerebral hemorrhage, fortunately, not life-threatening. As the neurologist explained to us, Jessica's temporal lobe, the hypothalamus, and amygdala were damaged by hemorrhage. The hypothalamus and amygdala are located in the limbic system, which is located deep in the temporal lobes. All of these structures are associated with emotions. Damage to the amygdala and hypothalamus can disrupt normal hormonal functioning, alter libido, and increase desire for certain sexual behaviors. After explaining everything to both of us, the neurologist asked permission to talk to me in private. He told me that after Jessica was discharged from the hospital, it was likely that her sexual appetite would increase dramatically, and her sexual behavior would also change significantly. He said there was a possibility that it could cause serious problems if I couldn't meet her needs, although he could prescribe medication that would stop her from engaging in destructive sexual behavior. To say I was stunned would be a gross understatement. I asked many questions, received the answers he could give, received a list of technical articles on the subject, and a 2-year supply of the required drug. Danica has been very understanding during this time, and so far, Jessica, I was in the hospital, and the first 2 weeks at home, we only had one date. After Jessica stayed at home for 2 weeks, and we no longer needed a day nurse for her, the doctor said she was in good shape. When I returned home from work on Friday afternoon, I was not greeted by 3 happy children as usual. Jessica greeted me at the door in a silk robe and 4-inch heels. I didn't even know she had a short robe or 4-inch heels. After I kissed her on the lips, I asked, "Where are the children?" "They're bouncing between your parents' and my parents' houses this weekend with their grandparents, instructed not to spoil them too much," she said with a devilish grin. "Oh, why?" I began to say before she planted a searing hot kiss on my lips, one that was far above her usual level of passion. When we were finally able to breathe, she led me into the living room, where the curtains were suddenly drawn, and pushed me onto the sofa. Jessica threw off her robe, revealing her naked body underneath, her pussy shaved, except for an arrow of pubic hair pointing to her glistening pussy. "I've been waiting all day for you to come home." "I missed you so much," she whispered seductively, leaning down, pressing her breasts into my face, and unbuckled my belt and then my zipper. When we finally dealt with all the aftershocks, naked Jessica fed me a small dinner, so that the blood quickly goes to the right place and not to your stomach. She sat on my lap while we ate and occasionally fed me salad, while I did the same for her. After dinner, she laughed when I hugged her from behind while she put away the dishes. "There's no help from you," and after that she added, "All I need is your help in our bedroom in a few minutes, and not with the dishes." She giggled as I carried her into our bedroom. When we got there, there were several unlit candles, a couple of scarves tied to the head of the bed, and a blindfold. With a big smile on her face, she lit the candles, and then, running her finger over my chest, looking into my eyes, she said, "You would take advantage of a poor, helpless girl by tying her hands to the headboard and blindfolding her, and then have your way with her, wouldn't you?" At that moment, I knew it was a dream. Or I had been abducted by aliens, but I thought, what the hell? I'll be happy when I wake up. So I playfully threw her on the bed. Our 2 energetic sessions must have really knocked the wind out of us because we fell asleep. I woke up a few hours later when Jessica gave me pleasure, looking up at me. I smiled at her. To make a long story short, by the time the grandparents returned our children on Sunday evening after dinner, my vision was blurred from sexual overload. I really have no idea how many orgasms either of us had. She certainly had more than me, and I don't remember how many hours we spent in each other's arms or just making out. I know for sure that there was more passion, tenderness, and physical contact that weekend than in any 2 years of our married life combined. When, on Monday evening, we have Jessica, there was another session of hot sex, I knew I was at a crossroads. There was no way in hell I could satisfy both Danica and the new Jessica. In my mind, I made a comparison. Danica was definitely prettier, with bigger tits, than Jessica, and I loved her. However, there was never any real chance that we could be together for a long time. New Jessica was as passionate as Danica, something I would have thought impossible just a few days ago, and although I didn't love her as much as Danica, I now had to admit that having sex with her was just as fun as having sex with Danica, despite the fact that she had a normal body and not the body of a goddess. Of course, the decisive factor was that we had Jessica, I had 3 children, and there was no way in hell I could destroy my family or disappoint my parents. I met Danica on Thursday afternoon and was completely honest with her. We made love one more time, with tears in our eyes, and then parted. Over the next year, the strangest thing happened. I fell in love with Jessica. It wasn't just about sex. It was tenderness, hugs, physical contact, her passion, her desire to please me. On a family vacation to the Bahamas 14 months after her accident, we clung to each other, her head on my shoulder as I turned her face towards me. "Jessica, I have a very strange feeling. I love you." Jessica smiled at me. "I know this, although you have never said it before. And you know what? I love you too." A strange idea came to my mind. We weren't in love when we got married. I think now that we are in love, we should get married again. You mean the rededication ceremony? No, I want all traces of our arranged marriage to disappear. We are starting from scratch as a truly, truly committed couple, fulfilling all of our vows and not just to please our parents. We get divorced and then get married again, I answered. Jessica. At first, she looked at me as if I had 2 heads, but gradually her gaze turned into a smile. "If you can provide reasonable, rational details, and if you propose correctly and buy me new rings, you might be able to persuade me," she grinned. "Thank you," I smiled. Then I got serious. "There is one thing I have to tell you, something before I fell in love with you, one of the reasons why I want to end our arranged marriage and start over." "You had an affair with Danica," she blurted out, a small tear appearing in one eye. I was stunned. We were so careful. "How?" I muttered before she put me out of my misery. "You called her name several times when you had particularly active sex with me, when I was more like an inflatable doll than a sexual being. This is an unusual name. It was easy to find out who she was. I was just returning from looking at her for the first time when I had an accident. I knew that I could not compete with her in attractiveness and sex. I didn't think you'd leave me, but I didn't think I'd ever be able to make you happy. I know you haven't seen her since I was in the hospital. Small mistake, but I wasn't going to correct it, especially since I haven't really seen Danica in over a year, and I know you love me now. So let's start over." The loving sex that followed was the most emotionally satisfying of my life. I went over the agreements on how the divorce would proceed. We had a standard agreement that split everything 50-50, and we continued to live together and raise our children together without construing it as a reconciliation. The day the divorce was final, Thursday, I called Jessica by phone. "Hello, Jessica. This is Bart. I was wondering if I could invite you to dinner tomorrow night." "How nice of you to call, Bart. Let me check my calendar. Yes, I am free. How to dress? Please dress more decently and then we can go dancing." "That sounds great. I'm guessing that since you're divorced, you won't be wearing any rings." "Of course not. I've already taken them down and will most likely sell them this weekend. Will I see you tonight?" "No, I won't be in touch tonight. Can I pick you up tomorrow at 7 p.m., Jessica?" "I'll wait," she grinned. Jessica and passed out. I rang the doorbell on Friday evening. "Why are you ringing the doorbell?" asked my youngest, opening it. "Why? Because I'd like to ask your mom out on a date. That's why." "She is here?" I asked with a smile. She laughed and then shouted, "Mom, Dad is acting strange." "Go down the stairs." Our usual nanny arrived just at this time and asked, "Why are you waiting on the porch, Mr. Tangier?" "I have a date with Miss Tangier," I answered calmly. She looked at me strangely, raised her eyebrows and said, "Okay, I guess." Jessica came downstairs a few minutes later. She looked really good. The makeup she did soon after leaving the hospital and her workouts 5 days a week at the health club really have a big impact on not only her appearance, but also her self-confidence. "Bart, didn't anyone invite you in?" she asked, suppressing a smile. "No, no one did, and I didn't want to be annoying." I pulled out a dozen roses from behind my back and said, "Although they pale in comparison to your beauty, I wanted you to have them before our date." "How sweet," she replied, and then she pulled my ear to her mouth and grinned. "You think you can get into my pants just by giving me flowers?" I just grinned. We had a great dinner. The dance club really paid off for our dance lessons, and after that I took her up the hill overlooking the city. It was a beautiful, starry night. We kissed and then turned to look at the metropolis. I made a quick phone call. I just said, "Now." She looked at the view while holding my hand. About 30 seconds later, a sign on the other side of the river lit up. There were hearts and flowers in the corners, but in the middle it was written, "Jessica, please make me the happiest man in the world and marry me." Jessica's. There was a stunned expression on her face when she turned to me and saw me down on one knee, holding a diamond engagement ring with emerald baguettes. Tears welled up in her eyes as she said, "Yes, I will marry you, Bart." And at that moment, I put the ring on her finger. I hope we didn't scare the nanny too much when we came home completely disheveled and with lipstick on our faces. That's not the only place she was. Luckily, the nanny was already 18 years old. So after I gave her $100, she went home, shaking her head. On Sunday, we went to the Garth house, having first called all the family members together. Everyone was there except for little sister Jessica, who was in college. After lunch, I called everyone into Garth's large living room. "I have an announcement that I hope will make you all happy," I began, and then extended my left hand, which Jessica squeezed with her right hand. "We and Jessica engaged and going to get married," I continued. When the smiling Jessica raised her left hand with a new wedding ring, at first everyone laughed, but when they finally realized that we weren't joking, my mother said, "But, Bart, you and Jessica already married for 11 years. "This is not entirely correct, Mom. We got divorced last Thursday and got engaged on Friday," I replied with a grin. There was some kind of commotion there. Everyone was talking at the same time, and if they weren't talking, they looked shocked. Finally, I got everyone to calm down. Some of you may not like to hear this, but you still need to know it. When we got married 11 years ago, it was an arranged marriage. Even though we were mostly compatible, we weren't in love with each other. Now Jessica fell in love with each other. We want to start over. This time, family pressure and convenience will not be the reason we get married. There will be only love. At this moment, we Jessica kissed. And by the way, the wedding is in a month, and although it may be scandalous, we will live together until then. Although my parents were a little worried when they talked to us and realized how joyful we were. Jessica, everyone seemed happy. Although our second wedding was not as lavish as the first, and although, in fact, only family members were guests, we did everything right. We also went on our second honeymoon. Unlike our first honeymoon, after this we were both bow-legged and with chapped lips. In later years, I discovered that being in love with my wife and children was heaven on earth. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.